Okay, here are the rules. This is basically first impressions of all these games. I won't have necessarily completed the game. While a few of these games are short, not all of them are. This is basically what I think of the game in one sitting. I am also only going to write about a paragraph or two about each game, and whether I like it or not. I am not going to cover games that are demos to larger games. This feels a little unfair to me as there is a larger, paid product attached to these. I will not include games you can no longer get on Steam. This also feels unfair to include a game you can't play. I will not include games that were free only for a brief time. I only feel inclined to bring this up because I feel like someone might try to catch me in a technicality, but then again, I could just change the rules. It's my video. I will not include games that require an additional paid purchase. I do not mean a game that has any DLC, I mostly mean the kind of episodic game that Telltale did back when they were big. I am also including free-to-play games in this category. Basically, if it requires an additional purchase to play the game that is included under this rule. I will not include incomplete games. I will not include compilation games. Games that contain several smaller games. Simply too much to talk about in a short amount of time. I will not include a game or games in a series. Again, too much to talk about in a short amount of time. Also, to briefly explain the text-to-speech elephant in the room, I spent a few days recording voiceover only for the Audacity file to disappear. So instead of spending another few days doing said work, I decided to do this. Now that is all out of the way, let's get into it. The gameplay is probably closest to Zuma or those bubble-popping browser games, where you are shooting a little cannon towards the top of the screen to try and match 3. However, there are a few twists, like your movement being mostly locked to a circle around the bubbles you are shooting at and that you don't actually control when you shoot. The game shoots for you with a beat of the music, but the special bubbles are always in the same order. The bubbles are all sort of magnetized to the middle and they fly around a lot more when there are less on screen. It's a very short and chaotic game. All my footage rounds to about 40 minutes. There are a few twists in its own established formula in a 5-level run that I won't spoil. Beating the game gives you an endless mode and seems to imply that this might become a bigger project at some point, but that might be me reading too much into it. I would love to see more from this idea if the developer made more. I don't know why it's on a bootleg DS, but that might be me not understanding the aesthetics. The soundtrack is really good, has to be since it is kind of a mechanic, and I will buy it. Okay, I am already breaking my own rules I established because I already played this one before recording and writing this, so this technically isn't a first impressions. It's a point-and-click adventure entirely created with a cute stop-motion claymation art style. Upon playing it for the first time, I was jump-scared by the cool Math Games logo. Not because it played a loud sound or anything, but because I didn't realize they were still a thing or published games for Steam. Since it is a game published by Cool Math Games, it tries to teach you math. I am very bad at math. I am so bad at math, when I was playing this for the first time, I didn't realize math was happening. When I did realize, I did the completely wrong type of math. I spent an embarrassing amount of time on the clock puzzle and the pink drawer. The math isn't actually that hard once you realize what it is, just very basic adding, subtracting, multiplication, and division. There is a hint system and a photographic memory mechanic, which allows you to take pictures of stuff you see and write notes, which more point-and-click should have. My first playthrough took me about an hour and my second took me about 50 minutes despite basically knowing all of the puzzles ahead of time. It's cute, short, and has genuinely interesting puzzles. Yahoo! Yahoo! I am thankful we live in a world where a game like Moonring is free. The developer, Fluttermind, has been working on this game for 6 years. It released in 2023 and it was 2 years before you could support the developer in any way financially. Moonring is a massive roguelike. Question mark? I don't know. What doesn't count anymore? Ultima style RPG. I also played some of this game before writing and recording. I got to the point where the priests tell you where the relics are and I have an hour and a half of footage. I plan on playing more of this game when I finish this video. There are a ton of interesting mechanics, from how the conversation system works, to the random encounters, the combat itself, and the mechanic where it gives you a healing potion when you die. I read it on a wiki and definitely didn't die 7 times in the first dungeon. The game is inspired by a bunch of mechanics that are 2 decades older than me that I never really encountered anywhere else as a comparatively new school gamer. This is a game that simultaneously holds your hand a ton and not at all. It has I am only going to tell you this once attitude, but it also writes everything down for you, so if you're stuck just go through your notes or chat logs. What I mean is, it tutorializes everything pretty well for a game that will beat you to a pulp, or maybe I need to simply get good and learn the game it's playing. The game the video game is playing, which I am playing, and need to learn the game's game, which I am not playing. Soundtrack is good and has a retro art style with nice colors that you can change if you wanna. Does everything right in a retro-inspired game like this.
Faulty magic whispered to the man who could mend. I tricked myself in thinking he could cure my best friend. 2 weeks in, his insides gave up. The judge can't tell, but why would words bring him luck?
Great, another game I've played before. Guess I am still a filthy, stinky liar. It's not like I have more to choose from or anything. Grimm's Hollow is a turn-based RPG maker game about being dead. The combat system works on an active turn-based system, which is what I think Chrono Trigger uses, but I have never played Chrono Trigger, so this is probably wrong. The special attack dodge timing mechanic has this weird thing where it tricks me into thinking it has different timing than it actually has. I think what is happening is that the window you are supposed to hit is actually much smaller than what is being displayed. This messed me up a lot first time I played, however since I knew what to expect going in this time, I had an easier time with it, so it was simply a matter of getting good. I like the art style that I don't know how to describe other than pastel ? But I know this is probably wrong. 2 wrongs make a right, and that means I am right to say this game is worth a look, despite your character's lack of eyes. The game I believe is only about 2 to 3 hours long and I am only an hour or so in, but I like what I have played so far. Finally, a game I have not played. I am no longer a liar. I learned a lot more about myself during the course of this game, like how on the very second dive into the cold water I was dumb and locked myself on a basic rock pushing puzzle. This caused me to get a bowl of ice cream and spend a few minutes watching a person drown. This is another RPG maker game that was originally made for a month-long game jam, where you dive into the cold water trying to track and photograph some sort of elusive creature.
I don't really know what I was looking for, honestly.
Before your oxygen runs out. Obviously, it isn't that simple since this is a psychological horror game about dolphins. While the soft lock is kind of annoying, it did show me you have about 10 minutes of oxygen, however it doesn't always stay that way, so don't breathe too hard. I got all the cassettes, 5 of the 6 photos, and 2 of the endings. My guess is that there are 4 endings. I have around an hour and a half of footage. The game did lag a ton in the flashback, but that could be because I was recording and the game has a little surprise at the end of it. It's pretty short, fun, and free, so you have nothing to lose. I mean, it felt free. From the developers, Limbo Lane, the people who made the great God Grove and Smile for Me, comes a game that reminds me too much of that other game where you have sex with an arcade machine with your head. HTTP. This is a game where you are given a short personality profile of a faceless character and random parts to make said face, and then you are just allowed to go wild. Make whatever freak you want. The only issue I had was this one guy said he was going to leave because he had to sneeze and then just didn't. I had to force quit the game, but it was an easy fix. The game does exactly what you think it does, not much more, not much less. The game has a goofy charm and an art style that is pretty similar to the developer's other games. I got all the achievements in half an hour. If you think you will like this kind of tiny game, you probably will, and if you want more, there is DLC to add more features and parts. Batography is a game that is tiny in scale. You play as a little fat kid with a camera and you need to solve a few puzzles. It took me about 10 minutes to beat casually and around another 10 minutes to get all the achievements. The game is adorable and I love this sort of foreground silhouette style. None of the puzzles are complicated. I solved a few by accident, but I think I am not the target audience based on the Steam tags. I had a dumb smile on my face when I saw the animation for climbing on the telephone wire and for the whole crowd surfing thing. I can't find too much to say, unfortunately, because it is so short. However, I did enjoy my time with it. The only other thing I can think to say is that this was the game that made me realize that a ton of cozy games are centered around photography. Runner is a beat-em-up with a unique hook that I would love to see expanded. Once the game starts for real, your health constantly begins draining. The only thing that stops it from draining is damaging enemies. It is a mad dash from beginning to the end and there are many easily killable enemies in your way. Again, a very short game, 10 minutes of footage short. It has that grungy, decaying digital art style that I would probably compare to stuff like Buckshot Roulette, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, or the movie Hackers. Again, not too much to say because of the length, but it's about the vibes, man. It definitely gave me vibes, man. Especially the end that makes everything you just did more great. Mr. Pompy's Extravagant quiz genuinely surprised me. When I saw it, it looked kind of generic. Oh, a kid's game turns out to be scary, how shocking, mind blown, but playing was actually a treat. I will tell you right now, there is something here for you if you are into these kinds of games. It does do everything you think it is going to do, but it does it exceptionally well. I don't want to spoil too much of what happens, but no, I recommend it. The actual mechanic of the quizzes themselves is surprisingly interesting. There are a handful of game show style lifelines, the game getting harder as you fail, the nature of repeating a trivia game until you get it right, and a Mr. Pompy surprise, which I genuinely think is really clever, explaining why would ruin the surprise. There is more outside of the quizzes, but again, spoilers. The rest mostly relies on jump scares, which did get me, but I don't think it will last with me. The animation is way too good if it is trying to replicate old 90s PC edutainment games. Not all of them were humongous entertainment. The developer should make the game worse on purpose to satisfy me specifically. I know I am missing stuff due to the achievements. I know there is a way to get them, but that might go against what the developer is trying to do here. I had a good time with it, but either way it's your choice to play. Just know there is a wrong answer you will be punished for. Interested in what the dev does next? Loop feels like a game composed of bits that didn't fit anywhere else in the Stanley Parable. The music definitely gives the impression that that is what they are going for. Loop is a game where you walk in a circle and things start happening. To say anything else ruins the joke. The game feels like it was made in an afternoon, especially with the default game development textures, but I think that is part of the joke. I downloaded a clicker counter app to count how many loops I had done, only to be 10 away from the achievement. The game made me exhale through my nose and I got all the achievements in little over an hour. I am pretty sure this game is a little more well known than the others, but I am partly using this video to get certain games off of my to-play list. Actually, now that I have double-checked, Grimm's Hollow is way more popular than I thought. from developer Michael Asnam. I don't know how to pronounce, who would go on to create the multimedia and has something to do with the development of Poco, comes a game where you are rejected at birth and things only get worse. This is a simple platformer: jump, left, right, interact, die, occasionally use the mouse for mini-game puzzles. The game knows how to take advantage of its limited mechanics. The game does get difficult, but the game is also willing to give you plenty of autosaves and checkpoints. I didn't find it too hard, but I think I am only about halfway through before I had to stop. I got to the garbage tram after the intestines maze about an hour in. I really enjoy the sketchy black and white art style and how everything is massively more detailed than the player character is. Another game I will be returning to when this video is done. Loop feels like a game composed of bits that didn't fit anywhere else in the Stanley Parable. The music definitely gives the impression that that is what they are going for. Loop is a game where you walk in a circle and things start happening. To say anything else ruins the joke. The game feels like it was made in an afternoon, especially with the default game development textures, but I think that is part of the joke. I downloaded a clicker counter app to count how many loops I had done, only to be 10 away from the achievement. The game made me exhale through my nose and I got all the achievements in little over an hour. I was going to play a different game originally, but learned in the tutorial of that one that it was a non-commercial version of a soon-to-be larger game, so I substituted FaeFever in last minute. FaeFever is a pretty straightforward point-and-click puzzle game that reminds me of two games that I don't remember the names of and can't find. The first game is a side-scroller named after a liquor where you play as a priest with a slingshot and a scarf and all of the characters are voiced by YouTubers. The second game is a different point-and-click game where the main character only faces left. You help try to defend a bar in the apocalypse from a gang and you convince a mutant to join a cult. But those games are not what we are talking about here. It is a pretty short game I have an hour of footage of that I beat within that hour. I enjoyed the music, none of the puzzles are that complicated, however I did have to look up the safe puzzle because I was an idiot and didn't see the thing I was looking for on the inside of the house. The ending is a little bit of an anticlimax, but enjoyed that they tried to add a little extra ambiguity to it. It definitely feels like the beginning of a larger project, however there isn't more. I want more. There is definitely a smidge of replayability with the alternate dialogue options and the multiple ways to figure out the answer to the one ice cream puzzle, but again the game is kind of short. I enjoyed my stay. Okay, I am going to start this one more seriously. This is the first game I felt obligated to put a trigger warning for. I am not always the best for knowing what does and doesn't get under people's skin, but this is a game where you play as animals in a slaughterhouse. If you think you are going to have problems with that, probably best to skip this one. I also apologize, since I recorded the footage incorrectly and a section of the screen is cut off. It's kind of a fantastical version of a slaughterhouse in an aperture science way, but it gets the idea across. The most uncomfortable I felt was when you had to stand next to the machine that just clubs the cow over the back of the head, but even then it's a big sci-fi robot arm that does it, when I am pretty sure real life it's just a dude with a hammer. I can imagine some people finding comedy in that honestly. Then stuff just starts exploding and falling apart. The game is kind of janky, but I never had massive issues with it. It's also pretty short and abruptly ends, just when I was asking myself, okay, what else are you gonna do with this chicken cow two-player character dynamic with puzzles? That's when it ends. I think the dramatic foreground objects work best when you are just walking and taking in the vibe, but when it has that with the puzzles, it gets confusing. The camera is kind of weird. I ran into a couple movement-related glitches, and I also feel like I solved some puzzles in unintentional ways. On the surface it looks like it would be one of those weird PETA games from a while back, but it instead isn't as over-the-top shock value. In a PETA game, it would have you rescuing all the animals in the end or something. Instead it feels like it does what the companion cube was satirizing in the original Portal. The game isn't egregious or anything, but I can imagine a better version of this, not that I have the skills to do that. Also, apparently the word egregious means both good and bad, which is weird. Moral Dilemma, the interview, is another game in the same breed as
The Stanley Parable.
Between this, loop, and toilet game, it makes me realize how influential
The Stanley Parable
is, despite the fact that was part of the joke in
The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
However, I would not say it as focused in as
The Stanley Parable.
It's mostly a straight shot, which is different from
The Stanley Parable.
But there are little side paths and distractions along the way, with extra little jokes. You unlock a parody of another popular relatively current game at the end, which was funny when it happened, but also makes it look like the game doesn't really know what it wants to be. A bunch of stuff is locked behind DLC, WHICHISNOTREQUIRED, but it's $5 and lampshaded. I am a person who only really is able to laugh when other people are laughing most of the time, but I enjoyed the humor of this game. A lot of the jokes are basic, but I found some of them good, very hit and miss, but they are different jokes from
The Stanley Parable.
I don't know if your choices actually matter, like
The Stanley Parable.
I only played through it once and then messed around with the bonus stuff. Like
The Stanley Parable.
though, I get the impression that I am missing stuff. However, I had to stop, because I had a very important appointment. I had a burger. Explaining more would just be me listing of the jokes and explaining them. Just like
The Stanley Prison Experiment.
I started playing this game and realized pretty quickly it violated my unfinished game rule, but then I played it for 2 hours and had opinions on it. Since I enjoyed my time with it and this is seemingly not a hugely known game, I am going to mark it down as game 14.5. It's an episodic Ace Attorney style game with 2 cases currently available. I haven't gotten all the way through case 1 as I am writing this review, but has the kind of zaniness that I am culturally aware of that the Ace Attorney franchise has in later games. I enjoyed the goofy writing, and I enjoyed the puzzles. Nothing Moonring logic, yet at least, but the whole moving to the next page of information during the testimonials after pressing confused me at first. This is because I presented evidence to the wrong page of text and when it came back as an incorrect answer, I didn't try presenting the evidence to the correct page, because I thought I had already did that. That's more on me than anything else and I figured out what I had done pretty quickly. I haven't played the Ace Attorney games, so I don't really have much to draw specific comparisons to. I can't make a distinction between 2 relatively similar objects without deeper context into the world and characters' perspective on things, but ultimately I have come to the conclusion that comparing the 2 things ultimately doesn't matter to the overall narrative, and that it's probably just to leave at a thing that can be easily referenced on occasion. I enjoyed the game though. Loop feels like a game composed of bits that didn't fit anywhere else in the Stanley Parable. The music definitely gives the impression that that is what they are going for. Loop is a game where you walk in a circle and things start happening. To say anything else ruins the joke. The game feels like it was made in an afternoon, especially with the default game development textures, but I think that is part of the joke. I downloaded a clicker counter app to count how many loops I had done, only to be 10 away from the achievement. The game made me exhale through my nose and I got all the achievements in little over an hour. I want to begin this review talking about the movie Naked Lunch. I have not read the book.
Must be nice you all done that.
I watched the movie and generally had a through line of logic despite the premise and tagline.
Why do we always feel compelled to construct gargantuan bases with their walls.
I didn't always know what was happening in its entirety, but I could keep track of the general themes the movie was trying to show and the idea of how many aspects of this man's life were blending together through this delusion.
The simple jest does not distract me from the animals who do not deserve this.
However, the very end of the movie broke any sense of logic and themes I was constructing in my mind.
I keep repeating myself, don't I?
It sort of broke every theory and idea I had made up until that point.
It's all dull. I did.
I know that may be the point, but maybe it's not. I don't want it explained to me directly.
I wish this line wasn't mine. I want what has been done to me, done to others.
I want to figure out how I feel about the construction on screen, rather than a definitive text of how I should feel about it.
It has a 20-minute line time, but the experience is not my own.
I don't know how I should feel about it, but that's okay, because those feelings are mine alone to not know.
Don't all minds abstract the memories we already have.
It feels very odd to include something like this in a sort of goofy format, but I am including this so that it can be known. Dodd Goes to the Museum is a cute short little game where you explore a museum. It gave me Paper Mario vibes. It is a game that advertises itself on enjoying the atmosphere of the museum. There is no real objective, but there are a few achievements and things to do, and getting everything is oddly melancholic and I wasn't expecting that. You look at all of the things, read a little snippet about them, collect a few items, talk to a few people, and then leave. Gameplay-wise, there isn't much to do, but the atmosphere is great. I mean the whole game and every aspect of it is controlled by the arrow keys, or was. The game is microscopic, but not every game needs to be huge. I mean, a lot of the games I have played for this list so far are pretty small and fun, and this one fits perfectly in that list.
It was 5 years ago at the carnival, while I was pitching my tent.
Pumpkin Panic is a survival horror farming game. I didn't get very far, but I know there is probably an ending. It's also permadeath, so you lose everything if you fail. Just know if the game gives you a rule to follow, you should follow it. I died the first time, because I assumed it was a classic trope of a horror monster trying to tempt and deceive me. Second time I died was out of curiosity. I knew it was going to be bad, but I thought I could outrun it. Third time I died was me overestimating how close I could get to the curious thing. I then got a little frustrated and spooked, so I decided to stop. Not full on frozen in fear, mind you, although I'm not too great with horror. The only time I ever really screamed I think was at Cuphead. It wasn't really the monsters that scared me, although they did make me jump a little. It was more mechanically tense, which is what you want from a game like this. Unfortunately for me, survival horror either frustrates me with its standard practice survival horror mechanics, or works for me 100% and makes me piss myself in front of family. I like how the different monsters interact with each other. Whenever you have an interaction with a monster, it gets put in your little log over here. The game mostly made me jump, but it did feel like there was a big thumb slowly pressing down on me and applying pressure. Not too hard, but enough to feel it and know there is pressure upon you. I don't think the normal mode is too long, but I can't make that claim for certain. I like the sound design, which adds to that proper amount of spook. I also really like the sort of autumn palette art style that makes your character cute, while still giving the monsters the gravitas they need to be spooky. It seems like the kind of game that would be someone's cozy game. Unfortunately, this is another game that is not technically done, so I need another substitution. Okay, let's see here. Dark Light is another unfinished RPG Maker episodic game, so that's a bust. Blue Night Laundromat is some sort of survival visual novel that is in another language. No. Dr. Langeskov, the Tiger, and the Terribly Cursed Emerald, a Whirlwind Heist, is a short meta-narrative game I have already played. No. Color Fire Redux is an arcade game I am simply not in the mood for. So no. Elong Plug is? We are playing Elong Plug. Elong Plug is a platformer where you must always be plugged in which the game does everything it can with its goofy pun title. It's about 20 minutes, but I spent more than an hour with it due to my corrupted footage of the game. I enjoyed how it plays, with the restrictions of the mechanics. I found him a little annoying at first, but quickly realized it was probably intentional in some capacity. Not annoying in a way that wasn't fun, mind you. It was fun figuring out how to navigate the environment like this. I feel like there is something with the mechanics of launching yourself once you extend your plug as far as it can go that speedrunners can use, but I am not getting into those secret worlds. It's a game where you get as long as possible in order to impress others, and I had a good time showing it off. I tried to pick a variety of games of that were semi-known, well-known, or obscure. This made me underestimate how popular some of these games actually were. It just makes me feel bad when I could talk about games that people might not be aware of at all, like A Place Forbidden. Anyways, I still think the WereCleaner is a good game. It's basically a stealth cleaning game where you play as a werewolf trying to avoid making an even bigger mess. If you get spotted or if any of your evidence gets seen, you have to kill that person and clean up the mess they leave behind. I understand why the game is timed, but I also enjoy stealth games where you learn the patterns of the bad guys and take it slowly. Here the time limit makes it feel like you have to bum rush it and hope for the best. I know the slower stealth game is not what the developers are going for, but I want to lay out what my basis is. I still had a good time with it, as it became a lot more chaotic and challenging to get a no-kills rank. It's pretty short if you aren't trying to perfect it and go for all the achievements and collectibles. I got through it in about 45 minutes, never lost a level, and managed to get all the collectibles. Here is how I did overall. I enjoyed the mechanics and how the last level changes things up, with a pretty simple addition. I did. From the development team that brought you fucking Slave Zero X. Slave Zero X, as we all know, is published by Ziggurat Interactive, who brought us Corridor 7 on Steam, Zombie Dinos on Planet Zeltoid, and the game where you travel back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination. All that is off topic though, let's actually talk about Exquisite Ghorpse Story. It is a game where you construct spooky stories with some other characters' prompts. It's kind of like a version of a Mad Libs game. 3 characters give you one of 3 sentences to pick from, and then you can change around all of the nouns so it fits better. I spent the least amount of time with this game so far, about 10 minutes, but I also don't think I could spend any more time with it. The art style is really unique and the music is lovely. It is definitely going for that vibe of just making up random ghost stories around a campfire, and I think it does a good job finding that vibe. Loop feels like a game composed of bits that didn't fit anywhere else in the Stanley Parable. The music definitely gives the impression that that is what they are going for. Loop is a game where you walk in a circle and things start happening. To say anything else ruins the joke. The game feels like it was made in an afternoon, especially with the default game development textures, but I think that is part of the joke. I downloaded a clicker counter app to count how many loops I had done, only to be 10 away from the achievement. The game made me exhale through my nose and I got all the achievements in little over an hour.
Trogdor was a man. He was a dragon man.
Firework War is a tower defense game that I didn't get very far in. You have to plant fireworks to defeat the monsters and prevent them from stealing your starfruit, which is your lives in this game and giving you bad luck this year. The monsters are called neon beasts, which I assume is a cultural thing I don't understand. There is this cool piggy bank mechanic that allows you to save up money that you take out at any point to assist you on future runs. Essentially, after every day all of your money, after tax, gets put into a piggy bank. You can take the money out of the piggy bank anytime, but the piggy bank is consistent, even through failed runs and quitting the game. However, I would almost always take all my money out of the piggy bank, because I had no money and no fireworks. There is also a mechanic of investing into your own house to generate more passive income, or as it's called here, joy value. You can also eventually pay your sister to help fight off the monsters. Defeating monsters generates joy value. Joy value pays for fireworks, passive upgrades, and home improvements. The fireworks only last a limited time and all have different mechanics on how they shoot monsters. There is definitely a balance with what fireworks you buy and how much you use, since all fireworks are temporary. The shop rotates all of its items every round, so it is hard to just invest in one strategy or one firework that trumps everything. The art style reminds me of Stargunner for some reason. I originally played last broadcast for this spot, but I didn't have anything to say about it, so I am going to swap it out with Night of the Abattoir Man. I played this game for about an hour, finally encountered the monster proper, died, and gave up. Navigating around a monster was tense since the area isn't cleanly designed to navigate around him, although there is enough space to do it. It's a classic slasher setup and the game itself is an RPG Maker game wearing the skin of an 80s PC game. I think the aesthetic works, but having played a few RPG Maker games, I know the feel of them by this point. You can't hide from me. I will say the build-up to the monster is good because you know it's going to happen at some point, but I also think it may have gone on for a little too long. However, I know it was working, because sticky keys activated at the same time as some dialogue. It made a weird noise, and it made me jump. There are secrets that are references to other horror things, YouTubers, and Pepino from Pizza Tower. There are apparently some mini-games at the end, 2 different characters, and multiple endings for each, but I never got that far. I feel that giving the killer a voice was not a good idea, however, I do think it makes the jumpscare when they kill you pop more.
Found you!
This is a game I will return to, however, I do have to finish this video. Markus Ritter The Lost Family is a point-and-click game in the style of 90s FMV games. You play as a photographer who is seemingly passionate about fire safety, learning the secrets of his ancestors and a magic amulet. None of the puzzles are really that hard if you explore around a bit, but the fun comes from how much it embraces the jank of the genre it's paying tribute to. It still takes place in modern day, but it is presented through that style of game. I would probably compare to the movie Death Proof, which is a movie by Quentin Tarantino that is shot like an exploitation film from the 1970s but takes place in modern day 2007. The game fully embraces the whole idea of being an FMV game from the 1990s. Every time you leave your house, you watch the same cutscene of putting on your shoes and jacket. Of course you can get around this with a fast travel system, but what? Am I not going to watch the same cutscene over and over again? You can probably tell that the author/main actor is probably a photographer in real life, as you can see in the forest section, where it really felt like he was having fun setting up pretty shots. My only real complaint is that the pause cutscene button and show everything I can interact with button are both the space bar. This means, when you click on something while holding space to see what you can interact with, and a cutscene plays, the game immediately pauses, because you are already holding the button. It isn't that big a deal, and I think it probably adds to the charm for me. What I do have a problem is that this is actually a demo. This isn't the full game. This game was actually kickstarted and released 2 years ago. You made me break my own rules again. You lied to me, Austrian man. I will never forgive you.
When the light is running low and the shadows start to grow and the places that you know seem like fantasy.
Since the last game was extremely rude, I needed a game that was more deserving of the number 23 slot.
Are they looking over here?
I picked this brand new game that is so much better than that other game whose name I've already forgotten and removed from my phone. Anyways, Wish Upon a Cat is a game about a cat boy who is sucked into another dimension and has to stop all of them from collapsing. I didn't fully get that every dimension you visit is another game from the developer Odin Cat, but I think it works without that knowledge, as the game mostly uses the characters from those games as minor NPCs. It was very self-referential in more obvious ways, like the developer being on the news and the fact that there is a whole section where they just talk about an upcoming game. The story itself is not about the self-references, but they always stood in contrast to the more subtle ones I didn't understand. When I did learn that these worlds were references to other games, it was basically when the game straight up told me at the end. It's a short romp, it's got a cute art style, a story, and it does everything it sets out to do. I think y'all like it. You won't go wrong with any of my game recos, except if they break my sacred rules. Stargunner is a shmup that originally released in 1996 by Abattoir that has been freeware on the 3D Realms legacy site since 2005. Unfortunately, the links don't seem to work for me on the legacy site. However, it's also on Steam, which is how I found it. Also, the soundtrack is on YouTube, and at one point Andrew also made a medley of the soundtrack. It's also the game that made me realize that I probably would have been lynched by old school games if I was alive in the 90s. This game thoroughly pens me. I genuinely couldn't beat the first level, but I enjoyed every second of it. It doesn't have any crazy twist or anything to the formula, but everything about it is solid. Does everything you expect from a late 90s shmup, and it does it well. Power-ups, enemy patterns, bullet dodging, those weird hook-shaped obstacles, the works. The local files on Steam comes with a README from 2005 from the original freeware release and a PDF copy of the manual. I should probably read that to actually understand the game. Nah, it's not like manuals were actually a part of the 90s gaming experience or anything. It's a bit of a more well-known game. From my research, I hadn't heard of it before, but I also did not exist in the 90s. However, not many people seem to know it is on Steam. Sorry I keep mentioning that I wasn't born in the 90s. If it helps, I wasn't born in the 80s either. Well, here we are at the final game. Saved something special just for the big 25. I don't have anything to say about this game. I don't know what to say about it. I knew the last game I had to talk about had to be Hog Hunter 2021. It was always going to have to be Hog Hunter 2021. From the moment I decided to make this video, I knew the last game I had to talk about was Hog Hunter 2021. You need to play Hog Hunter 2021. I cannot add any insight into Hog Hunter 2021. Everything that would explain Hog Hunter 2021 is within Hog Hunter 2021. The game has nothing to do with time loops. I came up with this bit before playing it. I wanted to thank you for making it to the end of this video. I spent quite a bit of time on it because stuff simply kept going wrong. Don't expect the sequel to this video, but I might make one if my interest allows it. However, I might just make a different video. Please make sure to show all these games some love, and I would like to end the video by thanking my lovely patrons, like... I don't have a Patreon.